What's up, mates? What's up? How's it going, mates? Welcome back. We're here with the stage 2 Pickems, of course. Just gonna go through it. Gotta move through fast. As you can see, I've already got them locked in, so there's not that sort of suspenseful, but I can talk through them and everything because, you know, I swear we usually have like a couple of days to get them in, but with the way that this major is, new format, well, extended format or whatever, they have given us like, I think 16 hours it was in total. So that's kind of crazy considering it comes out at like, you know, 12 a.m. my time. I don't really have time to record at that hour, and then I gotta go to bed, and then I gotta wake up, and then I gotta record the video. You know, there's not a lot of time, Valve. There's not a lot of time, guys. Anyway, I'm also really pissed. Also really pissed. This is obviously the way that we went, just to kind of remind you guys. What happened here? You know, Chinggis Warriors, absolute classic, winning their 0-3 game and then immediately going out, absolute classic. Legacy actually qualifying, mental. But yeah, we got 4 out of 5, and it's those little things, isn't it? I never really thought of putting either of these teams that went 0-3-0-3, so I'm not too annoyed about that. But obviously, we've got here, we had OG 3-1. We had Bait going 3-0. If that's the other way round, then I'm in. You know, I just needed to move one. If I'd have gone with everyone else and gone, yeah, Complexity 3-0 and OG to go through, then I would have been fine. But Cole let me down. Imperial, I was kind of completely wrong on. That's fair enough. You know, I'll take that one. But yeah, Cole going down 1-3 is just crazy. So unfortunate. But I am a little bit pissed off. Because, of course, in the old system, still be on for a diamond. But as it is, I believe I am only on for gold. I don't think I can get diamond. Maybe if I get all of these correct. But I don't think you can. I'm pretty sure. So anyway, we move on to stage 2. New, greener pastures. And let's talk through these. I did lock them in just in case I ended up getting busy today or something like that. And, you know, recording the video a little bit late. And I missed the timer. As you can see, 4 hours. That's about 4 p.m. my time. I could have been doing something. I might have missed it. So I was like, right, I'm going to lock them in before I go to bed. And then I can record the video even if I miss the timer. So that's that. It's unfortunate. It's not really the way that I like to do things. Some people do lock them in and then talk over. So let's start with the 0-3. Generally speaking, it's got to be someone from the previous stage. That's usually how it goes. Could be a Lin Vision. Could be a Tyloo. I feel like they're a bit more wildcardy. I feel like they understand playing against some of these higher teams. Legacy, riding on the wave of going under the radar in stage 1. You know, teams obviously not having any time to practice over their style of play or whatever. And ultimately just finding themselves a pretty nice groove. I feel like it's got to end. Surely they don't let me down twice. We'll see. Next, we've got VP. I'm pretty down on VP. I think VP have been not good for a while now. They've been pretty bad considering the names that they have on the team for the past 6 to 12 months. And I think that Electronic, you know, there is memes around him, of course. But I think there is some justification to those memes a little bit. He has dismantled a couple of rosters now from the inside out, it feels like. So there's something going on. Their style is just not good, but they have, you know, some of these great individuals that we've seen incredible like tournaments and not even just flashes, but periods from them as well, you know, and they're just unable to hit that. So look, 0-3 might be a bit crazy, but I feel like we are going to continue on with some surprises. You know, you look at how the first stage went. We've got 2 Chinese teams getting in, unexpected. 1 NA team, pretty unexpected. And I mean, they're, you know, qualified here, really. Pretty unexpected. So, you know, there's a fair case to be made that there's going to be some more upsetty teams. And I think VP will be one of them, that they will just completely bomb out, as they have been a couple tournaments this year already. 3-0 we'll go to next. Now, it's tempting to put the Falcons phase. They're the 2 biggest names in this stage. 2 biggest form teams at this stage. FaZe maybe not so much. They have been disappointing a fair amount this year, again, given who they have on their team, the loss of Rops and everything. It is Falcons that's been really catching the attention. Falcons maybe steamrolling into the conversation for the victory here in Austin. Would be mental. Would be mental. I am actually going to be out there. Got to flex that one time because it happened pretty last minute. Happy to get it happening. So hopefully something like that does occur and we can kind of, get super hype in the arena. The other side of things, though, as I said, FaZe might be your tempting one, given name value, given player value, given they always do well and all this sort of stuff at the bigger tournaments. But I think it's heroic for me. The form is better and the energy of these players is just really, really solid at the moment. We saw them in stage 1. Just a breeze, no worries at all for the most part. The BO1s always get a bit weird, but yeah, so that's kind of the logic behind them. It is tough because I think Heroic and Falcons surely qualify, even if they lose one, surely qualify. So it feels like you maybe tactically game it and put them here. That's definitely what I would have done in the old system, which I'll keep complaining about until maybe they bring it back. But that's not where we're at. So you have to get it right. And I think that what we did in the first stage, what I want to do here is vote with my head, as it were, and just pick something, stick to it. If it works, fabulous. If it doesn't, then I can be like, well, at least I didn't second guess myself. And I feel like putting them in the 3-1-3-2 section would be like, oh, well, they should go through and they might drop a map. And it's a bit too much thinking for me. So that would probably piss me off if they go 3-0 and I'd be like, why didn't I just put them 3-0? It was obvious, So, yeah, we'll stick with that. Before we go here, let me come down some of the other teams. Pain, look, I think they've been a good roster internationally. There's always conversations around this team and like, oh, yeah, what are we going to expect from them and think about what they were doing a couple of years ago and all this kind of stuff. And I do feel that they have some of the more solid pieces and, fragging IGL, Big Uzera, all this kind of stuff. And domestically, they do well. I want to say they won not this season, but the one before of ECL in very dominant fashion. They might have won this one again because I don't know that MIBR were actually taking part because, it's not worth you sort of VRS sacrifice and stuff like this. But they're just internationally not quite able to get there. They lost out to MIBR in Astana. They sort of bottomed out at Astana. I don't think it was right in last place, but pretty close. So I just think internationally they have been struggling the past year or two. Can't really break through that ceiling as it were. M80, look, a great team, cool organization, some good, fun players in there. But again, they might be the team that gets spurred forwards now because there is the home buff. Not sure where the lads are from. They're not fully American, but, there's a good number of them. And, of course, they're the last sort of solidly American team at the moment. So I think that there is a good case to be made that they will be pushing it. And you never know. Cloud9 did it, man. Cloud9 did it. So it does feel like anything is possible in the land of the free. So, yeah, I've kind of left them out just because I haven't seen a lot of them this year. I don't really know what to expect. I think that they had a pretty exciting breakout towards the end of last year. But they've not really delivered in the same way. And then the VRS, it seems, has just not caught up. And they're not really at a lot of tournaments. OG actually played pretty well. Nikados, of course, just insane, breaking records. Certainly a player that I think they'll want to look towards for the future, But can they do more? There is going to have to be somewhere that they stop. And I could put them here instead of Bet Boom. I could maybe put them in instead of Bait as well. They were very, very close themselves, of course, to getting the 3-0 at OG. But someone's got to fall, and I just feel like a couple of these teams here have that little bit more experience that'll help them through. Same kind of story for Namiga. Again, looking really, really good, and we've got some great players, and it's good to see them in. I think they definitely deserve to be here. They've been at the higher end of tier 2 for a while. Great for the VRS, you know, all this kind of stuff. But I don't think that they quite have the ceiling yet. But they can prove you wrong, right? They can just out of nowhere prove you wrong. Like, I feel Linvision and Tyloo did. I thought one of them would get through. I lent the way of Tyloo. If I'm not mistaken, it was a little close, yeah. So they were right down to the wire, but they managed to do it. Linvision, obviously, with this wild game against NRG, you can see here. NRG should have won that one. I remember them breaking down the round where it all went wrong. So yeah, wild game. And I think because of how close it is, and again, just the sort of level that the Chinese teams are at, they play so crazy and whatnot. And I think that it does take an extra level of almost like coming full circle, where it's like you're more of a high-end player, so you can get ready for that just wild, almost bottom-of-the-barrel style that the Chinese teams like to employ. Whereas if you're in the middle here somewhere, you're still trying to figure this out, it's a bit harder to go back. You don't really want to go back and be like, yeah, we got to run through. And then you try and play them at that game, actually, and they're just better at it. So, you know, you end up in this really weird spot of like, do we try and play them off the field, or do we beat them at their own game, but then we can't beat them at their own game? And then, you know, you just get stuck in some weird limbo. So that can certainly happen, you know. That might happen in the early stages. I can see them beating a 3D Max. I can see them beating a Furia, right? But I don't think that they'll be able to carry that on the whole way through. It would be kind of cool. Fan of a number of players in these two teams for sure. We got Starry, we got G. These are guys that I like watching and want to succeed. Been following their careers for a while, but yeah, we'll see. We shall see. I've got them out for the time being. Randomly fill empty picks. All right, cheers, guys. That's a great choice. So now we move to what I have voted for. FaZe, although, yes, they have been falling, you look at the rest of the teams here, there are some questionable positions for them. Are they going to be able to beat Falcons, Heroic, the inform bait that looks really good from the first stage? Tough to say. They might struggle. They genuinely might struggle. It might just be a 3-2. It might be a close 3-1, you know, that their BO3s that they play are really close. Depends how it comes about. So I think that they'll make it, but if we were doing it like in some sort of weird order, I'd probably put them like here, you know, instead of right at the front. Then we've got Bait up next. Obviously the Inform team. This is a team that's been building experience. They've got guys who have had a touch of the higher level, bringing that down to the lower level. They're also individually some of the most cracked players in their class of players, as it were. So really, really great. That seems to have translated onto LAN. Nothing to, you know, shake at here. Some decent games. Little close against the Imperial that didn't really go so well for them. Maybe a couple maps to work on, right? But when they're on it, you can see they are really quite solid. They're playing, you know, a couple of maps that we've not seen too much of, I suppose. Inferno coming through a lot. Maybe there is a chance when they're tested on deeper maps, depending on who they play against, that they, again, might find it a bit tough. But I like this team a lot, and I think they have some great players. Ascenthia with a great tournament at the moment. Yeah, so I do think they have some really great players, and it's tough because I think they're one of those teams that might get picked apart by the higher teams if they actually do well at this major, but still. BetBoom, similar kind of story. We look back at how they did. It was good. It was decent. You know, losing out to FlyQuest here is not fantastic, but the FlyQuest just seemed to be the BO1 merchants. Bless them. Very, very close themselves, although not here. But very close in terms of the raw numbers of, you know, going 2-0 super quick. But I swear they did that last major as well. So, you know. But BetBoom, looking good. Not looking great, for sure. They're a team that I could easily swap out. You know what I mean? I said I could swap OG for them. But again, I just have to look at the players. There's a lot of major experience there. It's a bit sad to see what's happening to Axile, right? Roll it back a couple years, mate. Come on. But I think he's just sort of checked out. Which checked out for him is still passable, but not at that level, not at that contending for world #1 level that we saw a few years ago. God, it's got to be like 3 or 4 years ago now, though, hasn't it? To be fair, very different player from those days. Furia, I mean, again, I like the look of this team. They maybe have let us down a little bit this year. They have actually been playing loads, which is fair enough. Sort of snuck under the radar at Astana. It's kind of what I was just checking there. And yeah, it wasn't the most stacked event in the world, but, you know, a bit of a ramp. They've had a few tournaments now with Yekindar and Molodoi, these sort of European imports that they've got going on, or Eurasian, I guess, in a sense. But yeah, I think that it has actually been pretty good for Yekindar watching him play again. He's a bit more free, right? I think he got stuck in a rut over at Liquid, obviously trying to IGL as well. Summit in the water over there with players that just definitely shouldn't be IGLing, and then running their careers into the ground. So that's maybe a conversation for the next stage of the Pickems. But yeah, it's a little bit of a tough one, really. I think still a good team. I've liked what I've been seeing, and I think they should make it through this stage. Again, bit of a squeakier team that I'm not as confident in. The next two, I am more confident in. 3D Max, big up 3D Max. Definitely battled their way from being like a tier 2 team about a year ago, and I think that they are now, you know, more in the conversation for tier 1 than VP would be and Pain would be. But these are teams that we, you know, keep seeing at those sorts of tier 1 tournaments just because of the way qualifications work. So they've been battling a lot. I think they look good. The addition of Body has been pretty good for them, I think. Still not quite getting those top finishes that they would want, but they're like a gatekeeper team. They're pretty consistently, this year, last year, able to hit 8 to 12, somewhere in that bracket. You know, they might come a little higher, they might come a little lower. It depends on how the sort of tournament works, but they're within that knocking on the door to top 10 finish, right? Obviously, they're going to want higher than that. They're going to want consistent semi-final finishes, I think, at least, this team. You look at the players, they're all journeymen. I think they know that their careers are not going to get much higher than that. Like, winning a major is always possible, but is something that might be out of their grasp. Having an era is something that might be out of their grasp. But I think that they are a team in this kind of stage where you've got a couple higher teams, a couple informed teams, and then some middling teams. I think that they absolutely should be able to win this, you know, because that's just who they are, what they do, and they're confident in dealing with those types of matchups. They very rarely get surprised by them, let's say. And then the last is MIBR, and I think MIBR have really had a breakout 12 months. They've been looking better and better. Definitely, for me, the top in the region at the moment, right? Which might be a little bit controversial to say when you've still got Furia kicking around, but I think MIBR are a bit better and a bit more consistent. Maybe not in the super recent, to be fair, just because of the way Furia have been beating them in the head-to-heads, which is a bit tough. That is a bit tough, and I think, you know, knocks my sort of argument a little bit. But I generally feel that the consistency against like the international opposition is just better from MIBR, and I think it's like a domestic sort of matchup. There's a lot of psychology going on there as well, of course, as we know, in the Brazilian scene, and the respect that they have for the bigger guys, and they probably play a different game and just get in their own heads, really. So yeah, I still feel, whether that argument is valid or not, I like MIBR a bit more. I was a bit down on them when they added Luke Halsey. It wasn't solid. They got rid of Drop. You know, Breno comes back in, continues his legacy in this team, and they have had an upswing since then. I think it's only like a matter of time. 1 or 2 more movements for this team, and I think that they could really, really do some great work. Maybe a Big Uzera comes across, so they've got like a proper dedicated, experienced IGL, something like that, and they could really start flying in my eyes. You know, Exit and Insani and Lukowski, I feel, as a sort of rifling core, are really quite solid. Insani and Lukowski, especially when they get going, just really, really beautiful to watch. You know, got that kind of Brazilian flair to them, for sure. But look, that's going to do it. We'll call it there. I think that's plenty enough of time. I have, you know, extended them out a little bit, feel a bit more comfortable doing that, get talking. and we might start turning this into a little bit of a trend, I suppose, a little bit of a consistent thing that I just, you know, do the old reaction-y type videos to a bit of news and some movements and all that sort of stuff. But for this video, that is going to be it. Thank you very much for watching. If you made it to the end, I'll see you in the next one.